And oh, yeah, and the death rates amongst men in the poorest areas of the country are even worse than that. Men are still more likely to die of circulatory disease and cancer. 75% of premature deaths from coronary heart disease are male. Men have a 37% higher risk of dying from cancer and a 67% higher risk of dying from cancers that affect both men and women. Almost 70% of men are overweight or obese, rising to 80%, I think, in the 55 to 65 age group. And that's the group I kind of usually work with as well. Um, Middle-aged men are twice as likely to have diabetes than women and twice as likely not to know they have diabetes. High blood pressure affects about 30% of the men in the UK. And it's the biggest risk factor for disease after tobacco and poor diet as well. But also in the UK at the moment, suicide, 4 out of 5 suicides are by men. It's the biggest cause of death in under 35s, and there's been a real sharp increase in the rate of men committing suicide, I think between 45 and 60 as well. So yeah, it's scary times for men's health. And if you look at men's behaviors and lifestyle behaviors, men are more likely than women to smoke. They smoke more cigarettes a day, smoke more likely to smoke hand-rolled tobacco. I think in the UK at the moment it's about 15% of men smoke compared to about 12% of women. And in the 70s when it was about 45% of men smoked, and back in the 50s when maybe 70% of men smoked, you're seeing it come down. And I think I read a stat about Bangladesh that the prevalence of smoking amongst men has come down from about 70, 80% 25 years ago to around 35% at the moment, which is great. But sometimes it's those harder to reach, really entrenched smokers that are still there, and they're the ones we need to kind of help. And hopefully, this will give you some ideas. So, smoking is well, it was the leading cause of preventable death and disability in the UK, but it's kind of neck and neck with obesity at the moment. And about half of lifelong smokers will die prematurely from smoking, losing on average about 10 years of their life. So, oh, you got a raised hand? You got a question? Okay, all right. Just put that one back up there. Sorry. Um, where was I at? Sorry. Yes. So again, smoking, one of the biggest killers of men. Alcohol in the UK, men drink more alcohol and are more likely to drink to hazardous levels. They're twice as likely to get liver disease. Alcohol and tobacco are closely linked behaviors as well. So people who drink more alcohol are more likely to smoke, and vice versa. But also people who drink larger amounts of alcohol tend to smoke more cigarettes too. Um, Men generally tend to eat a poorer diet than women. They're less knowledgeable about healthy foods. Their diet is heavily influenced by convenience. They eat too much red and processed meat, too much ultra processed foods, and only about a quarter of men consume the recommended amount of fruit and vegetables. About 80% of men eat too much salt in their diet as well. Um, so yeah, so not great health behaviors, and also help seeking. I think men are less likely to go to their doctor or the pharmacy for advice, and there's a certain threshold of illness that men will go when they're very ill, and they don't go before that as well. So often men delay presenting to a healthcare professional when they need that support. And as an example, I did an outreach project for a cardiovascular disease and awareness and prevention program, reaching men over the age of 40. And I went to snooker halls, and I often spoke to middle-aged men. And I remember one guy telling me we were doing his blood pressure, talking about a healthy lifestyle. But he said, "Oh, what do you do if you've got blood in your poo?" And there's a big focus on bowel cancer at the moment. And I said, "Well, do you have blood in your poo?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, how long?" He said, "6 months." I said, "Well, this is when you get checked out." So again, he saw the sign 6 months ago, but he still didn't do anything about it. And that's pretty common. So back in 2018, a leading men's health charity in the UK commissioned some research that involved expert input, literature reviews, qualitative and quantitative impact modeling, key stakeholder review workshops, in order to create an overarching health promotion framework and a list of prioritized keystone behaviors that would improve men's health, really focusing on their mental health and risks of prostate and testicular cancer, really. And based on that work, um, these general health promotion behaviors were created to cover the keystone behaviors that men should take to improve their health and prevent the leading causes of premature death in men. And the goal of this work was for men to live longer, healthier, and happier lives. So then getting the most out of their lives, which then would also gen cross over into the lives of their families too. So it meant supporting men to live healthier, stay resilient, conduct self checks, and be informed enough to be able to talk with or make a shared decision with a healthcare professional if that was needed. But it also helped them develop and maintain real social connections to kind of provide a sense of meaning and belonging in day-to-day living. Um, and also, to provide a support network for when times get tough. And what I'll do is I'll go through these behaviors because I think they really sit well in supporting men to stop smoking, to lose weight, and again to combat isolation, which then led to suicide as well. So how do you live a healthier life? The biggest, most impactful keystone behavior to improve the health and well-being of men was to stop smoking. Like I said, it's kind of neck and neck with obesity as the biggest cause of preventable death and disability. The bans and the price hikes make the biggest difference, but also stop smoking services do make a huge impact too. So the stop smoking services in the UK, they used to reach about 500,000 smokers a year, but I think that's come down. There's been a lot of cuts that have impacted the service provision, but they're still there and they still provide an effective way for people to stop smoking, providing nicotine replacement therapy, stop smoking medications, and also e-cigarettes too. Half of people do manage to quit, but they often leave it too late. It's the only consumer product that, if used as intended, will kill half of its users prematurely. Um, and I'll talk a bit more about how we reach and engage more men to quit in a few more slides. Yeah, is there a question? Oh no. Okay, well, I'll carry on. Um, Yeah, increasing physical activity is also very important to living a healthier life. About 40% of men in the UK are active or getting the recommended amount of physical activity in their daily lives. But 75% of men think they're active enough. So there's a discrepancy there. So we think we're more active than we actually are. 90% of our day is we're sat down, whether it be at the computer, at the workstation, or on transport. Or when we're at home as well. So we need to be more active. And yeah, that has been impacted by sedentary work as well. We need to be eating a healthier diet to reach and maintain a healthier weight. Half of all calories, I think it's even 60% of all calories consumed in the UK are from ultra processed foods. And they have a bad impact, they have a detrimental impact on physical and mental health. It's impossible to out exercise a bad diet and consuming too much. So again, we need to eat a bit more healthily. And I when I'm speaking to my guys, I'm not preaching them that they have to be an ultra marathon running vegan yogi or anything like that, but they can still have drink, but drink responsibility. But in the UK, well over 25% of men drink at hazardous levels. So when I deliver men's health programs and projects, insight projects, I often use this simple model, and I find it really works for men. And it's how we reach, engage, and support men to take action, change behavior, and ingrain it in the long run. So one of the most important things is, where do you reach men? So in all my projects, I use the local doctors in the area as a way of reaching men, because If I advertised on social media or leaflets, I'll get a handful of inquiries. But when the doctor sends a text message to my guys, again, it's a numbers game, but I get a 5% uptake. So as an example, I get the doctor to send a text to 2,000 eligible men. Um, and out of that 2,000 men, I may get 160 inquiries in the space of about 3 or 4 weeks. Out of those 160 inquiries, I may get about 110 contacts with men and sign up maybe 100 men to a program. And then 80 will actually turn up and maybe 60 will actually complete. So I kind of work on between 3 and 6% of men actually engaging and completing the program, depending on the group I'm after. So that's my go-to strategy using the GPs because I think again, if the GP tells men they need to do something about their health, they're more likely going to act on it. And when I've done outreach projects in the past, one of the things that men say when you ask them, "Oh, what would make you stop smoking? What would make you lose weight?" They're saying, "I need an ultimatum from the doctor. You need to lose weight or else." So that's why that trusted source of information is great for me to provide men to come into my program. Another great way to reach men is through the workplace because men often prioritize the importance of work and work in their lives and providing for everybody. So going into workplaces to work in partnership with the human resources personnel, occupational health teams to improve the health and well-being is a vital tactic, and you can reach lots of men that way. There's lots of organisations are focusing on health and well-being, so again, it's a great place. Um, it's about finding physical and online places where men gather. So even if it's, when they're fixing their car at the mechanics or the tire fitters, stuff like that, I've been there. I've gone to cafeterias on building sites. I've been to the pool halls. I've been to the football matches. I've been to cricket matches as well. And it's going to where they are to get a conversation going, really. But once you've got them, once you find out where they are, it's about how to engage them. And I read a great article recently actually about a project in inner city Bristol, which is probably I think the fourth or fifth biggest city in the UK. And they were trying to reach Somali smokers, and they were running smoking cessation programs out of local cafes where men would go with men from that community, and it worked really well. So yeah, you go to where men are. Well, let me just check if there's any questions. Oh, sorry. No, no, nothing there. All right, perfect. I think men, in terms of engagement, they like action-oriented approaches. They respond better to kind of problem-solving approaches rather than emotion-based ones, emotion-focused ones. And that's why I kind of chose men's health engineering as the title for my business, and our project and our programs. Uh, it was also because my dad's an engineer, and as a kid, I always used to work on the building sites with him as well. But I saw how men responded to the engineering approach. It's the problem-solving approach. It's about making little tweaks to get the best result. Um, and again, everybody's heard of a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer, but everybody knows about being an engineer as well. So everybody knows that one. And again, I think it's about making men feel comfortable with the approach. Um, and explaining the process. The engagement part is it also, explaining the process to them, removing those barriers, saying, well, look, it's for people like you, run by people like you. Um, we're not going to be, preaching this that you're going to be that ultra marathon running guy with a six pack. That's not what we're about. It's about making little changes that do, when added up, improve health and well-being. Makes sense so far? Hopefully it does. And again, getting into action, I think it's about making it easy for them to sign up, convenient locations for them to attend. Often I've had teams of younger people who like to do everything by text and email, but the middle-aged guys didn't respond to that. They wanted to be called. They wanted to hear the person that would be on the program. They wanted, we needed to build that rapport and that trust to get them on board. And I often find that once you've talked to them, it's not about convincing them or telling them that they've got to improve their health. It's just, I used to tell my teams, you've got to be the nicest person they've spoke to that day. And once they buy into you and that you've got their best interests at heart, they come on board. And we really did see a marked improvement in recruitment when we started calling rather than texting and emailing them. And like I said, it's about the rapport, it's about the trust. Um, and also, I think it's about being trustworthy for them as well. I think, in order to kind of ingrain the longer term habits, the longer term behavior changes for them, it is about not just becoming a face-to-face, a coaching relationship. It's about side-by-side communication. It's about everybody working together. Um, it's creating opportunities for connection. And during different activities, whether I get them playing table tennis, doing Tai Chi, or doing yoga, or going for walks, where different conversations kind of can emerge naturally. I often have a structure to the sessions that I deliver, but often I want to be very client led. I want to talk about what the group wants to talk about, and sometimes we go totally off track. But I think by doing that, again, allows them a bit of control over where the program's going, and it's about co-delivery and co-development of the program too. Because yeah, I don't want to just preach at them. Okay. So yeah, one of the other keystone behaviors that was developed in that framework, and also I think is vitally important for helping people to stop smoking, is the idea of building mental resilience. As often smokers report that smoking helps to relieve feelings of anxiety and stress. Um, and in the UK at the moment, there's they say roughly 1 in 4 people will say stress really affects their everyday life at the moment, and another 1 in 4 on the verge of it. So that's half the population. Other studies have shown students um, are reporting, 70, 80% of students are reporting that stress is really impacting their everyday lives. So I think it's a good skill that we help them develop because when people do get stressed, they do revert back to the bad old habits of coping mechanisms, especially men. They'll go to smoking, drinking, gambling, shopping, and we have to give them kind of healthier coping mechanisms to deal with it. And I think the high smoking prevalence amongst people who are facing social and economic deprivation suggests that smoking, is definitely a coping mechanism. But instead of helping them relax, it actually increases anxiety and tension. That feeling of relaxation while kind of mimicking stress management tools. You go outside of the situation, you take a few deep breaths, you're getting a hit of nicotine. Um, but that feeling of relaxation soon gives way to, withdrawal symptoms, increased cravings. So again, yeah, it doesn't help deal with stress. And I think sometimes it's just helping men see that. In our programs, we talk about the importance of self-knowledge, knowing your capabilities, your limits, your personal temperament, and your typical coping style, and even what your values and goals are. And I think sometimes it may sound fluffy to men to talk about values and goals, but they've never really talked about it, even from their school days. What do they want out of life, and what really means something to you? And I kind of say, well, the values that mean something to you often underlie or influence your actions and behaviors. Um, so I get them to explore their values, and by identifying what means something to them, develop goals on the back of it, so they're more likely to persevere with this behavior change program, more likely to turn up when times get tough. Um, I get them to think about, their abilities, their strengths, their character strengths. What are they good at, and how can we bring that to the game? Um, do they make the most of them? And do they acknowledge their limits and know when to stop? And to effectively manage stress, you need to be aware of your own optimum stress level and coping styles, as well as your goals and values that kind of guide your reactions. And I even do like guided relaxation sessions to big groups of middle-aged men. You wouldn't expect them to take part, but it's always great when I can have a room of about 25 middle-aged men and I can send them to sleep with a guided relaxation. It's brilliant. But yeah, and they really like it, and they adopt these new behaviors which you wouldn't have thought they'd do. We also speak about their smoking identity and non-smoking identity. Why they started smoking, why did and hopefully show the difference of why they continue to smoke, and it's more about addiction and ingrained habit. And then I kind of take them on that journey. It's like, well, did you see yourself as a lifelong smoker? And they always say no. And it's like, well, when do you intend to quit? And again, by listening to them develops that rapport and that trust, and they're more likely to open up to you too. Let me just check if there's any more questions quickly. Nope. Right, perfect. So again, I try and incorporate this into my programs because as men get older, their social support networks gets a bit smaller. Often our social support networks determined by our families and our partner. Um, but as I said at the beginning, isolation impacts a lot of men in the UK, and they don't have people to talk to when times get tough. So in our groups, I kind of say we're not here to be best friends, but sharing obstacles, barriers, successes, achievements can help other people on their journey. So I think group work works really well, whether it's helping people stop smoking and lose weight. It probably is the most successful intervention. But the thing is, I think they're becoming less and less popular in how people deliver programs. Often it's the one-to-ones, um, but you do get some great results in the group support. And I know even with smoking cessation, maybe I think it was only about 4 or 5% of all stop smoking um, statistics in the UK were through group work, but I think it should be more. Um, and I think, in these groups we can normalize sharing emotions. We can role model it. We can use stories, metaphors, analogies of people like them who've done this successfully and who've faced problems too. They're more likely to follow their peers in these programs. So trying to engage local leaders, local influencers in what we're doing can again increase uptake, but get people stopping smoking in bigger groups. I often talk about the hero's journey in my sessions and how, often we have this yearn for adventure and we leave the comforts of home, but we're quickly faced obstacles and barriers, and our confidence improves, but the more obstacles and barriers that we overcome, but we quickly realize that we need a support group to help us defeat the evil empire or slay the dragon. But our journey doesn't end there. It's also about helping other people on their journey, when their times are tough. And that's really important to this too. And it's funny how, again, at the beginning of groups, guys are often sat folded arm, not really acknowledging each other, but at the end, they're sharing lifts home, they're giving each other hugs and stuff like that. And it's great to see. It's really great to see. So yeah, one of the final keystone behaviors is about knowing what's normal and recognizing change. So like I said with the guy in the pool hall who was saying he had blood in his poo, and again, didn't do anything about it. I think men do know when things aren't right, but they don't know where to go on the back of it. Often they'll look at their friend's social media, or they'll Google something rather than go to the NHS or a trusted source of information. So it's also about saying, well, do you know if you're over 45, you have access to the NHS health check, which, does diabetes and cholesterol check and blood pressure check? Did you know uh, after the age of 45 you can get a PSA check for the risk of prostate cancer? If you're The risks are 1 in 8 men will get prostate cancer. If it runs in the family, 1 in 4. And then they will say, "Oh, well, my dad had that," and it's like, "All right, well, maybe this is when you need to get checked out." So again, getting testimonials from other people, getting experts in from their community who could talk about it as well. Again, makes it a bit more of a holistic program. And I do that for both stop smoking and weight loss groups as well. Sometimes I get experts in from a different area altogether, but just to talk to them about specific concerns. Um, but it's also about taking action when something isn't quite right, or yeah, as well as when your risk has increased. And I think sometimes, like I said, it's sometimes the hardest part for guys is just turning up to these sessions. And again, the next part would be making it normal to kind of contact the pharmacist, contact the doctor when things aren't quite right as well. And we've got to kind of aim for this cultural shift to accept vulnerability as a strength. It's like we've got to do this, and you do get some men who are concerned about the prostate check. It's like, well, I don't want the rectal exam, and it's like, well, again, you don't have to have that immediately, but you can ask for the PSA test first. But if you're really if you're really concerned about your health, you're going to have to do what the doctor says. And this is the way that it works. So I often say to the guys, it's about adapting to your situation. You start where you are, use what you have, and you do what you can. We don't bury our head in the sand. We're going to take action. And again, on the back of those programs, I do a know what's normal session in my programs, and then men do get a bowel cancer check, do get a prostate cancer check as well, or do get the um, NHS health check where they do a diabetes and cholesterol check too. And yeah, so again, I think the most effective way to help men offer kind of multiple ways for men to engage on their own kind of terms, really, in a way that kind of feels relevant. The message resonates with them, and it's low pressure. The goal is to kind of meet them where they are and allowing them to create a space to expand their comfort with openness and kind of help seeking too. It's crucial to acknowledge that they're all different. There's diversity amongst men as well. So in these areas of East London that I work, South East London, I work. I've got men from West Africa, North Africa, East Africa, uh, South Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America as well. Um, and it's interesting that there's great diversity there, but there's still very similar concerns, responsibilities, and commitments that all the men are kind of going through. And it's great how for a kind of community cohesion kind of feel, how these guys kind of bond together as well. Um, and that's why I kind of say, a one size fits all approach doesn't work for men. You've got to kind of have a structure, but you tailor it to the men in front of you, really. And I always say to my teams, it's not about convincing or tricking people or into behavior change or looking for these kind of eureka moments. It's about being there day to day, getting them to buy into you. Because if they buy into you, they'll come on that journey with you. It's all about the relationship, the rapport, and the trust. So yeah, no, it's not about finger pointing or it's about, yeah, this is where we're at. It's not a fair fight. This is how we've learned to deal with stuff in the past, but there are other ways out now. And often, it does involve a lot of listening, because some of these guys don't have very limited options to talk about the stuff that they're going through. So they're a bit guarded there. So it's about being supportive too. And that's really it from me. I hope that's helped. Here's some pictures of some of my guys. I get them doing Tai Chi, yoga, table tennis, personal training as well. It's funny. I think the best thing I ever found that worked was playing table tennis. I've never heard so many laughs, so much backslapping, hugs after. until I got them playing table tennis, and now it's a core staple of my programs. Um, it's everybody's played it when they were a kid, and now we've got many who are in their late 60s playing and setting up their own informal tournaments, so helping them to lose weight, get active, and even some of the guys who've cut down on alcohol and stopping smoking too. Um, so yeah, so that's really me. If you do have any questions, happy to answer them. If I just get rid of that one, I think I've stopped sharing, haven't I?
Uh, Great, great. This is great. Thank you, Mr. Paul. I would like to give the floor to the participant first. If they have any questions, there haven't been any questions at all in the chat. But however, you are open to open your mic or raise your hands or type your questions in the chat because I have not some I'd like to talk with you about them, but let's wait for them first. While we wait for them, I will just go ahead with some of my questions because it seems very interesting and it's very I almost all of us would agree it's very foreign to us because the men in our country and even their behavior, their tendencies of why they smoke or what they use the cigarette as a escape of their work or stress or daily livelihood. Many of us don't even think about our health or mental consequences and they just smoke because they like it. A lot of us would not ever even think about quitting. That is a big problem because they don't know what they're doing to themselves. That seems to be the problem. So one of the first things I'd like to ask you is about the approach you took to meet your local doctors who would reach out to these vulnerable individuals, if I may. Could
Yeah,
you,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, yes. I because the doctors often they have this database where they've got details of all their practice, the people who come into their practice, and they often record smoking status. So it's easy for them to say, I can say to them, well, look, I need to reach men over the age of 45 who are smokers in this particular area. And they say, well, we've got this database and we can send them a text message. And it will say, based on your last appointment with your doctor, you have access to free stop smoking support. If stopping smoking will reduce your risk of illness, improve your well-being, and here are the contact details. And then they'll get back in touch. So getting in touch with the doctors to do that does take a bit of time. So whenever I've done it in the past, it does take a few months of lead in time, and they never send the text when you want them to. So because I work with the public health teams, I can lean on their influence to get the doctors to do that work for me. But you're right in terms of, a lot of people they smoke initially out of because it's the norm. Everybody in their family smoke. They've started it that way. Maybe influential people they knew when they were younger smoked and they wanted to be part of the group. Um, but then it does become that habit. And look, I'm an ex-smoker as well, and I was a big anti-smoker as a kid, but all my friends smoked when I was about 17. So I wanted to try it. And next thing you know, I'm smoking, and I did enjoy it for a bit, but there is many I probably didn't enjoy it from 25 onwards, but I still smoked for the further 5 years, where not knowing about what stop smoking support was out there, I didn't know what to do. And you'd heard a few scare stories, but not many of the impact of smoking. But you'd still hear, oh well, my grandma lived to 101 and she smoked every day, and you'd hear these kind of things, and you buy into that. Um, but yeah, I think it was only when I got really interested in health and well-being, and I thought, well, I can't be a smoker if I'm helping other people to manage stress, lose weight, and stop smoking. So I had to do it, and I had to be role model the kind of health behaviors. Um, so yeah, it's it's a difficult one. It is those awareness campaigns. It's not the scaring tactics, not too scary, but saying this is the impact it's going to have on your health. Um, yeah, dying from emphysema isn't a great or lung cancer isn't a great way to go, but there are support mechanisms out there. That was a bit of a waffly answer. I hope that answered a little
Yeah,
bit.
no, that actually makes sense because we're basically trying to share experience because the scenario is basically the same, but it's the approach is so different in our country. Because even if
Yeah,
I were to say approach my father, who is a doctor himself, about quitting smoking, he's going to acknowledge all of the points that I noted down from your talk, and then he's still going to do it. It's
yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah,
it's one of those problems, and which is why I love the diverse participants we've attended here. We have men in the chat, we have women in the chat, and I really hope they can learn at least one thing, and they can try it with one of the people in their lives who smoke and see where it goes. And even if they buckle, I think that's a win.
yeah, yeah. And I think one of the first questions I always ask to build the rapport and build trust, and it's not to be preachy and say, "Oh, you need to give up," but it's kind of, why did you start smoking? What got you started to start smoking in the end? And do you think is it the same reason you started why you continue to smoke? And then it's no, then it becomes habit. It's, oh, I need a cigarette after food. Oh, it's associated with the reward for a stressful day. And then they start seeing that discrepancy in why they started, and often they started because of somebody else. And then I kind of try and build in that, there is a choice to be made here. We've got a heavily addictive product that is really influencing our behavior, but there is a choice and impacting our health. But we do have a choice to find a way to get out of that too. But yeah, you're right. It can be a difficult conversation for somebody who's had a ingrained smoking habit for however long, and maybe your father, who's a physician, would only listen to somebody, one of his peers. If one of his peers stops smoking, he's like, oh, maybe I should stop smoking then.
That is a fantastic observation. With that, I don't have any more questions. I think the lecture's been really clear. That is why our attendees are all good on that point. I'll still be sharing the recording with everyone. Dr. Zakir has texted in the chat that he will have to leave, so he's said his goodbyes to you and called it an excellent talk. And Dr. Purnata has a question.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Hello, nice to meet you. And it's not actually a question. I just wanted to discuss one point. And thank you so much for your wonderful presentation today. I just wanted to discuss that for me being a doctor, I also noticed this that it is very hard to quit smoking. After talking with some patients, I try to advise them that, oh, you shouldn't smoke. Even the passive smoking is also harmful to other people. Not only it harming you, but also it harming someone else who is not actively smoking. So I found that it is very hard for them to quit smoking. So have you tried to, understand why this is so hard to quit this habit? Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yes. Yeah, it is a very hard habit to quit. Again, I was not a social smoker, but a light smoker, and I probably made three serious attempts to quit. But I made hundreds that didn't last a day. So we've got a highly addictive product that even heroin and cocaine addicts say quitting smoking is harder for them to give up. Um, and even people who go through stop smoking services in the UK, again, there's a high chance that they do relapse. Um, it's, I think it's like with all these kind of journeys, it's just overcoming obstacles that, once you get to the kind of that balance where the concerns are outweighed by the enjoyment, that's when people start making a quit attempt. And sometimes it is feeding into their worries about their family. Say, well, look, do you know you're smoking? could have a detrimental impact on you and on your partner, on your children, and you're affecting their health for the years to come as well. And again, that adds to it's not preaching, but it's adding to their little bit of worries, and they'll be more likely to do something about it. Um, but you're right. It is a tough conversation to have, and when people are heavily addicted, if they're smoking 20 plus a day, they're getting a lot of hits there. And it's leading to changes in the brain that kind of, they're having those withdrawal symptoms. And when time gets tough, the first port of call, they revert back to the default coping mechanism of having that cigarette because they need that relief. Um, so that's why sometimes those withdrawal oriented approaches like the nicotine replacement therapy are pretty good because they take the edge off the cravings and the urges. So, the patches or the inhalators. So it gives you something to kind of mimic smoking. And that's why the electronic cigarettes are quite good and popular because it does what the smokers ask for because they want a healthier alternative. They don't want to give up their habit straight away. Provides that hand to mouth action. You get a little hit of something, and it should be less harmful. Um, Thing is, in the UK at the moment, there's a good few million e-cigarette users, but they're so good, these e-cigarettes. They're becoming quite addictive too. So you just see people with it stuck to their hand, and they may have quit smoking, but they're heavily addicted to the e-cigarette now. Um, but they're not getting the thousands of chemicals in their system that they would do with a cigarette. So yes, again, there is no quick fixes with this. It is about um, making the healthier lifestyle a bit more attractive to some people who are smoking. It's like, well, do you know that your health will improve dramatically? You can reduce the risk of the poor health outcomes later on. But again, if that's all they've known for the last 20, 30 years, if all their family have smoked, it is a harder sell. It is definitely a harder sell. Um, but bit by bit, we can get there. And I think also some people need more support to do that. I get people who come through weight loss and smoking programs who can't do it in 3 months. They need longer term. They need 6 months. They need year-long programs really that can kind of really keep them engaged, really provide the support that they need. Um, and that's what I think you'd probably find with people who've been smoking 20, 30 years, smoking 20, 30 a day. They need more longer term support. So I hope that's answered your question a little bit there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No worries.
All right, the final thing I'd like to discuss. This is not exactly a question. This is more of a discussion, and I'd like to have your take on it as a closing note. So, we've been talking about smokers and men who are in their middle age, young or old, but let's focus on the younger side for a bit. I mean, as of 2026, the world's very fast paced. We're always on our internet with short form content, and we're in a trance like generational state where we are addicted to short dopamine bursts. And smoking kind of sort of does the same, as much as I know, in the neurochemically. So, uh, do you think that our lifestyle changing and the newer generations finding other ways, not cigarettes perhaps, but vaping or e-cigarettes as a form of the same dopamine, little dopamine hits, and it'll be very difficult for them to understand that what this is doing to their longer term health because they won't figure it out until they're 50 or 60 when their uh, health is declining.
Yeah, yes, I think this modern day society encourages us to consume, 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 whether it be food, drink, information, stuff, resources. And I do think we are in a bit of a trance-like state because there's horrors going on around the world, but we're too busy shopping and looking at our phone to complain about it. Um, I I do think we are very distracted, and sometimes to the extent that we always want a bit more information before we even act. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there are lower levels of kids taking up smoking because they've got getting another hit from somewhere else. Um, and what are the cool kids doing? I think I remember reading a bit of research a few years ago saying about how in the UK, the wealthy girls who started smoking were smoking because it was cool, but the girls from the poorer environments were smoking to look like the wealthier girls, and part of it is to belong and how we're seen. Um, so yeah, I think will they know in 40, 50 years time? Hopefully we'll begin to see the errors of a way that we're missing out on a world, right? Instead of looking it through the phone, there's some beautiful things out there. There's some amazing people out there, and we need to kind of focus on connection, relationships, and rapport and community.
You're right. That's a good answer. Someone else has a question. Marcia, could you ask the question?
Hello.
Hi there.
Uh, Thank you for your amazing presentation. I would like to ask what motivational triggers work best for men or people? Is it health risks, family responsibility, financial savings, or performance related goals? What do you think?
Okay. Ooh. Um, so when I ask people who come onto the groups, whether it be smoking or weight loss, what made them turn up? Um, and we kind of dive a bit deeper. It is a lot around concerns about their health, concerns about being around for their family in the future, being around to play with their grandchildren. Finance, especially in smoking, is a big thing. The price hikes, the taxes have really had an impact on smoking levels. So now in the UK, um, it's roughly about 18 to 20 pounds a pack. Um, so it's very expensive, and you do hear about people from the lower socioeconomic groups who sometimes, because they're so heavily addicted, paying a quarter of their weekly income out on cigarettes. So that has a huge impact. Um, Performance goals, that helps get us to a bit of where they want to be, but I think the biggest thing is that concern about their own health and well-being, and also worrying about the impact on their family, then finance, and then maybe the goals after that. That makes
Thank
sense?
you so much.
No worries, no worries.
Uh, So, in countries like Bangladesh, where smoking among men socially normalized, how can we shift cultural perceptions without creating resistance? What do
Ooh,
you think?
ooh. I think we need influential leaders to kind of start spreading the word. People who are looked up to, who've got that authoritative presence in the community. Um, So again, doctors work really well. That's why I think, again, if they can lead by example, if they start just even having the conversations, I think that's a good one. But also, I think communities, getting them to tell the stories of how maybe smoking related illnesses have impacted the health of families and the communities, sharing those kind of stories, but saying, well, look, when we do quit, this is what's achievable. This is how we can feel so much better. And I think it's those stories that people buy into. I think, yeah, just the scare tactics sometimes make you want to smoke more. With sometimes with these packagings. When I smoked, I was like, right, in my pocket. I'm not looking at those pictures. You find ways around it. Yeah, I think it comes across as being told you need to do this. Um, and I know as a man, if anybody tells me to do anything, I'm like, who are you? What do you want? Why should I listen to you? So I think that again, that judgment kind of approach doesn't work well. But again, I think if we get people talking about benefits of giving up, then I remember reading this study that said, if one person in your group gives up smoking, next year, probably 20, 30% of that group will try and give up as well. So it happens with influence, you know. So we've just got to start the trickle happening, and then it will cascade, hopefully. Is that okay?
Thank you so much for your kind response.
Hey, no worries.
All right, that was wonderful. The question answer session really took its turn. Thank you again so much, Mr. Paul. I think we're safe to close now. But again, your time was valuable, your insights helpful. We'll try to use it as much as we can. And I would like to make sure to send the pamphlet or the guide you were talking about to from Dr. Zakir. I'll collect it and send it to our participants. They can have a look at it. I might also try to make a Bangla version of it so they can spread about. I hope that's okay with you. So a little
Yeah,
more people will get some
perfectly
knowledge.
fine. Yeah, perfectly fine. I'll send it this evening
Great.
to Dr. Masood, and yeah, hopefully he can share it out. And yeah, no, happy for you to do that. That'd be great because it's got a lot of the UK stats in it as well. So you again you can tailor it to suit your needs.
Right. We're doing the pharmaceuticals are doing some smoking research, smoking and cancer relation research themselves. So Bangladesh will also have a strong statistical publication very soon that would tell us what is our condition, right? So we can compare it, we can develop something like it. We'll get in touch with you. I'm pretty sure you will be really glad to help us to develop a system like one of yours, baby steps. So, with that, thank you so much. I'd like to close today's session. Uh, Mr. Paul, have a great day, and my attendees, have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Goodbye.
Bye.